at lunch.
You are looking live.
Live at lunch. Live at lunch with Ott and Hanny on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
What the hell's going on out here?
Now, here's Jimmy Ott and Charles Hannegriff.
Yeah, for some reason or another, you sound a little taller on radio.
Is it live? Is it live? Is it live?
From Rufino's on Highland Road, welcome to the Friday edition of Live at Lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. I'm Charles Hannegriff along with Max Grotro. Jimmy Ott will be out for a little bit, and we're thinking about him and his family today. We're glad that you are with us. Of course, we'll have lots of picks coming up for the weekend, and some. We got to look ahead now with the national semifinals starting next Thursday, with of course. Troy Macker, with Chris Massaro, with Bruce Marshall. We'll talk with Gordy Rush a little bit in hour number 2. His thoughts not only from the Texas Bowl, but he was also in the Superdome yesterday for Notre Dame and Georgia, so we'll talk to him. We'll have some picks. Max is going to give you a perfect slate. How many picks are you going to give, Max? 5, 6, 7, 8? Are you still handicapping darts?
3 games. Yeah, darts. Darts final today. We can make 5. We got college basketball.
Yeah, we do. We got
SEC.
college basketball. We got some NFL games that matter this weekend, and some Saturday games. So we'll talk about that. We start though with the Sugar Bowl yesterday, played after the delay because of the terrorist attacks. We're going to talk about the football part of this mostly. Notre Dame beat Georgia 23-10. The game really swung on a pair of turnovers in the first half for Georgia. One on a run by Trevor Etienne that was going to set Georgia up in prime scoring position that ended up turning back one threat. And the second one near the end of the first half when Georgia was trying to make something happen, down only 6-3, and Gunnar Stockton sacked from behind, fumbled, gave Notre Dame a short field for a quick touchdown that put them up 13-3 at the half, which felt like it was a lot more, given the nature of the scoring in the game. That was the first touchdown, and it came on a very, very short field, less than 20 yards. Notre Dame returned the opening kickoff of the second half for a touchdown, and it was all but over at that point. Add in 2 other big plays in this game that went against Georgia because of their own problems. The long pass that went down 67 yards to Arian Smith that would have taken them down 1st and 10 at the 11-yard line, which is about as prime as you can get. They had an opportunity to get another first down before they scored. And the sideline interfered with the official that moved it back to the 26. That turned back what was a huge, huge scoring threat for Georgia. And then Dylan Bell's drop in the second half, early in the third quarter, that would have also set up Georgia in prime field position. All of those mistakes of the Bulldogs' own doing. Riley Leonard had a decent game. I thought they gushed over him maybe a little bit much where the passing was concerned yesterday, but on the ground, he was money, especially in the second half when it came to moving the sticks. Georgia did a good job of really kind of bottling up Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, but Leonard was a whole nother kettle of fish. He rushed for 80 yards yesterday, and they were important yards. They were chain-moving runs. They were at crucial points in the ballgame for Notre Dame. I thought Gunnar Stockton was okay. I thought the arm strength is fine. I think the accuracy is pretty good, too. What I thought Gunnar Stockton lacked, which he will get with reps if they choose to continue with him as their starting quarterback, is he did not make quick decisions. He held, which is not uncommon for an inexperienced quarterback. He held onto the ball a little bit too long at times. There were open receivers that he just didn't let it fly, and it cost Georgia. You put Gunnar Stockton in a spring practice where he's got 15 practices starter reps. You put him through an August, through a summer workout where he's running the thing. You put him into an August where he's starter reps all the way from the beginning of camp to the opener. You give him 2 games against rental wins in September where Georgia's clearly the best. And I think Gunnar Stockton is an SEC starting quarterback. Given this situation, this was a lot to ask of him. And I didn't think he played badly, but I didn't think that he against that Notre Dame defense, even down some key pieces, you had to make some quick decisions. There were some plays to be made there, and Stockton just didn't get rid of the ball in a timely manner. So if I were Georgia, I'd feel pretty comfortable with him moving forward. But yesterday was probably a little bit too much to ask. The stage was a little bit much for him. Though, again, I didn't think he played badly, but it was just a little bit much, Max.
Yeah, he could make some throws. That
got
deep
plenty
ball
on him,
was,
huh? Yeah.
was perfect. At times, I think he throws with a little bit too much pace. He lacked a few of the touch throws that he needed. Yeah. And like you said, the decision-making was a little off. He's a really good player, though, and I think they've got something for him. Maybe a slightly exaggerated throwing motion, I guess. That can depend on what TV you're watching. I mean, that's something you probably have to see in person. But he showed you the tools that he needed, and he showed some poise as well in moments. But ultimately, just a little outgunned. And I thought he played well considering the circumstances, despite the fact that I thought Georgia was going to win the game.
There's a tremendous amount of pressure on him to go in here and play in this game with very little experience against competition. I mean, he played a half and change against Texas. That was a lot to ask. So Notre Dame wins the game. They move on. So I got a couple of thoughts here about the fallout from this. Number one, if you're an SEC fan, this is not going to be your finest hour. You're going to hear a lot from the national media, from the other fans. And listen, this is the byproduct of 2+ decades of flat-out dominance. The SEC fatigue, which we've talked about a lot, is real. And when you finally get them, okay, just think about it from this way. How absolutely sick to your stomach as an LSU fan were you of Alabama in 2019? I mean, 8 years worth of just misery. Some close games that fell just short. Some games where you just got absolutely pounded. You knew the better coach was on the other side. Most of the time, the better personnel was on the other side. In most cases, the better personnel was on the other side. When you finally beat them in 2019, it's like, I got you. Finally. That's how the rest of the country, I expect, feels right now about the SEC. Got you last year. Got you again this year, especially if Texas doesn't end up winning it. But even if Texas does, it'd be better served for LSU, for SEC fans, just to say, you know what? It was a down year in the league. Next year they'll probably be back, be in good shape. But this year was just a down year. If you spend your time trying to defend this year in the Southeastern Conference, I think you're in for frustration. Georgia won the league. They lost 3 times, okay? And at least one of those times they got badly beaten. You can say they had the backup quarterback in the playoff, and that's true, but you still got beat by Notre Dame by 2 scores. Texas, I think, frankly, is a little bit lucky to be in this position. We certainly talked about their regular season schedule. They lost twice to Georgia. Let Clemson hang around too long, maybe not in danger of losing that game. They were certainly in danger of losing to Arizona State. I think they're a little bit fortunate to be here. Tennessee, who made the playoffs, lost 3 times. They were embarrassed by Ohio State. The mainstays in the league, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Florida, all with at least 4 losses. South Carolina, who was a surprising team this year, also with 4 losses. Ole Miss, 3 losses. One of them at home to Kentucky, who won only 1 game in the league, at home to Kentucky. They also lost to a 7-5 Florida team late in the season. They lost to a slightly above average, maybe average LSU team. They've got no case. If you spend all your time trying to defend that and just don't say, hey, you know what? Weren't that good this year. Not by the SEC standard. It's not like they're a bad league. It's not like the Big Ten's going to go on a run like the SEC did. But right now, the SEC didn't have a good year. It's as simple as that. There's overwhelming evidence to that point. So if you want to do the SEC chant and all that stuff, knock yourself out. But nothing of all the things that aggravate me about Alabama fans, and believe me, there's plenty. The one that aggravates me the most is they just won't accept when they lose. Oh, we didn't. Somebody was hurt. Oh, the schedule maker screwed us. Oh, the officials screwed. No, you just lost. Okay. That's what the SEC's got to say, okay? Get into recruiting, get in the transfer portal, regroup, come back next year. You may have 5 teams in the playoffs for all I know. But this year, 2024, you weren't good.
I'll say the depth was there. The top of the league has certainly dipped. Texas is one of probably the top 5 teams in the country. That's probably the only SEC team you could say that about. And maybe that the SEC would have been better served if you had a different team in. Tennessee, sort of a fraud, I think, in the playoff. But based on their schedule, they were able to get in. I think Ole Miss was probably the best team that got left out. And this hasn't nothing to do with their bowl results, but they were probably the best team in terms of roster out of Bama and South Carolina, the teams that got left out. They're a top 12 roster. They just, ultimately didn't have a top 12 resume, and I think it's fair that they got left out. But the depth of the league was sort of there. You've got some teams kind of on the outside looking in, but the top tier of the league certainly isn't. And like you said, there's some frustrations nationally. People believe that there's a bias in covering the sport, and that starts with ESPN. That's the reality of the situation. So when they're down like this, the piling on is going to be very obvious, and I think it's sort of warranted.
I don't mind the coverage of the best teams when they're the best teams. Okay, when Alabama won the national championship, listen. You just got to sit back and take that. They won the games. They won. I have a problem when you're hyping them up and they're not that good. Okay, it's not just the name brand. There's got to be some steak behind the sizzle. Okay, you want to talk about Saban's national championship teams? Hey, listen, that's fair game. You want to talk about some of the teams that didn't go there? Oh, well, they were still the best. No, they weren't. They would have won. Okay. I'll push back a little bit on Tennessee, if only because I think they got the worst draw. Of all the places that you could have gone in the first round of the playoffs, Columbus turned out to be the last place you wanted to go. I think Ohio State's going to win the national championship. They're favored to do that. They're playing the best right now. I thought they had close to the best roster at the start of the season. They threw up on themselves against Michigan, but other than that, it's a pretty salty bunch. If Tennessee had gone somewhere else, if they had gone maybe to Penn State, I'd have given them a lot more of a chance. Maybe they would have lost badly there too. Who can say? But I did think they got the worst draw that you could get now from a wide-angle lens, which is to have to go to Columbus. Something else that this SEC loss yesterday with one team in the semifinals does that nobody's going to get to yet, but I'm going to kind of jump the gun on this a little bit. We talked about it on the pregame show before the Texas Bowl. We did basically the same recap yesterday of LSU's roster. With the news now that Jalen Milroe is going pro for sure, that Carson Beck is going pro for sure, that Quinn Ewers is not coming back to Texas, and with the recruiting rankings, plus the transfer portal rankings, plus the SEC's pretty dismal performance, save maybe Texas, in the postseason, I'm looking at this now, and I think when they start to put everything together, when the national media really kind of looks at this, what this LSU roster is, the quarterback coming back is massive because I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to be preseason all-conference first team. And when you look at what everybody else has got coming back, I think there's a very good chance that LSU is going to be a preseason top 5 team next year. I base that on the fact that you have the quarterback coming back. And there's very few quarterbacks in the country next year that are going to be able to – Garrett Nussmeier is probably going to be, on one of the preseason All-American teams. Maybe not first team, but, certainly up there. You look at the quarterbacks in the league. If Georgia goes with Gunner, if Texas, of course, will spend the whole offseason, they'll try to convince you that Arch Manning is some combination of Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, except better. Jimmy's going to love that. And maybe he will be, but so far not. Nussmeier's better than Nico. I don't know who's going to play quarterback for Alabama yet. I love Lenore Sellers at South Carolina, but South Carolina's not going to be a preseason top 10 team next year. I don't think A&M with Marcel Reed is going to be a preseason top 10 team next year. I assume that Austin Simmons is going to take over in Oxford. That's a very good transfer portal class that Ole Miss has got, but I think they'll be ranked a little bit behind that to start. So you tell me who else is – if you're ranked number 2 in the SEC or 3 in the SEC, you're probably going to be in the top 5 or 6, 7 on the outside nationally. Tennessee, who might be right there. I'm looking at the teams that might be right there with you. Tennessee, 18 out in the portal, 1 in. We're not done. Georgia, 9 out in the portal, 1 in. They're certainly not done. Alabama, 18 out in the portal, 5 in. Ole Miss is breaking even right now, 15 out, 15 in. Top 3 portal class. Kiffin does this very well. Texas 9 out, 3 in. They'll probably be the preseason choice to win the league next year with Arch Manning, and they'll probably be the highest-ranked SEC team in the preseason top 25. But I think LSU will be pretty close behind them. A&M, 23 out, 11 in the portal so far. I think when you put the quarterback, the transfer portal class, what LSU's got coming back, and what everybody else has lost, I think you're looking at a preseason very damn close to top 5.
It's a good talking point. We know the preseason rankings.
I do a talk show, Max.
Don't matter a whole lot. Yeah, that's certainly something for us to talk about now.
Yeah.
I will say I agree with a lot of your SEC sentiments on Nussmeier probably being first team all conference to start the year. The SEC thoughts, the SEC media doesn't always match with what the national polls will be. You'll see sometimes a boost towards the legacy programs.
Yeah, that depends on where media days is. Sometimes.
Yeah, that's fair. But sometimes the SEC can look at a little bit more closely, and it won't exactly match what the national poll will be. I'll just say that in 2019, the preseason ranking for that team, which obviously did some pretty good things, number 6, and that team was coming off a Fiesta Bowl win. I do think they look a little bit, the national media will look a little bit at not just what your last year was, not just what's coming back, but also where you finished in your bowl game. A little bit more notoriety to the Fiesta Bowl, and how many of these national pollsters that take their preseason rankings are looking that deep into the transfer portal or not. I'm not saying LSU's not deserving to be among the top 5. I think they'll be closer to 8, a little bit more to the back end of the top 10.
Okay, fair enough point. We knew the 2019 team was going to be good. We had no idea they would be that good. Burrow's stock going into 2019, not Joe Burrow as we know him today or would come to know him in the 2019 season. Going into August of 2019, Burrow stock versus Nussmeier stock going into August of 2025. Who's higher? Nussmeier.
Nussmeier, yeah.
But by a significant amount, okay? I'm just I'm telling you, you, don't think of Joe Burrow afterward. Think of Joe Burrow before. I'm talking about preseason rankings. I don't know if LSU's going to win a game next year. Being sarcastic, of course. But I'm not telling you they're going to finish in the top 5. I'm just telling you where I think they're going to start. I may be off. I may be off a little bit. 5 may be a little bit tall, but I think they're going to be pretty close. That preseason quarterback means a lot. Nussmeier is going to be at the top of most of the Heisman list. I'm not saying he's going to be the favorite, but he's going to be in that grouping, that top bunch.
I've seen him second in a lot of spots,
yeah.
So that makes sense. That will boost them for sure. But yeah, it's they're going to be top 12, Charlie. They're going to have that pressure on them.
I think they're going to be way higher than they're going to be in the top 12. I will be surprised if they're not in the top 7, and I think they've got a pretty good shot at the top 5. We'll see. There's a long way to go. A lot of these portal classes, including LSU's, are not done. We got to get through spring football, injuries, and all that stuff. I'm just saying right now, today, we look ahead. Max, this is what we do. It's just talk show stuff. But I got evidence to back up my claims. We're here at Rufino's here on Highland Road. Appetizer features today the crispy calamari with the pickled lunchbox peppers to go with it. The Prince Edward Island mussels today. Also one of your appetizer features, and the diver scallops with the butternut squash puree. Entree features the Chilean sea bass. Beautiful sea bass. I've seen that here before. And the slow roasted prime rib with the horseradish cream and the roasted potatoes. Come on by here at Rufino's. Restaurant is now open for lunch. Live at lunch from Rufino's, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch with Ott and Hanny from Rufino's on Highland Road on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Remember, you can always get the show on demand, LouisianaSports.net and 1045ESPN.com. New Handycast coming on the podcast on Monday as we'll take a look back at LSU's bowl game win. Let's bring in Chris Massaro now as we turn toward the semifinals of the college football playoffs. Chris, Happy New Year. How are you?
Happy New Year, Charlie. How you doing?
Doing okay. Your big takeaways now that we've seen 4 teams get byes and all of them lose before we head into the second round here, or I guess the third round here of the semifinals.
Yeah, it's a little disheartening for me. I had some of my biggest futures on all 4 of the bye teams, and all of them to go out 0 for 4 is just gut punch to me. I mean, especially the ASU game. And then, yesterday, Georgia with just careless play. That's my biggest takeaway from yesterday's game. And you could look at a lot of things, Kirby Smart getting out-coached or, Gunnar Stockton being, just his first big game. But I actually thought he played pretty good. But my biggest takeaway, if you watch the game, there was no gang tackling by Georgia. It was one-on-one. A lot of times when you just had, Riley Leonard, he had to get the first down. He gets to the edge, and it's just one defender for Georgia. It's just not what I'm used to seeing from an SEC defense, especially a Georgia defense. I'm not sure if you guys noticed that at all.
Absolutely, and I was really surprised at Georgia's inability to set the edge. That really surprised me how often Notre Dame, it was Leonard a lot of the times, but that they were able to get outside of the contain and get, I'm like, where's the SEC speed here? Okay, Georgia usually pursues to the ball as well as anybody. There's some first-round picks on that defense, and I was really surprised at Notre Dame's ability to break that contain and get outside and get extra yardage there. And then the big turnovers, the sideline infraction, the big drop. Georgia just did too many things to themselves. Josh, I didn't think Notre Dame played badly, but I thought Georgia made a lot of some of them self-inflicted, some of them Notre Dame caused. Just too many mistakes to win.
Yeah, too many mistakes. I mean, the fumble going in, what was that, his first fumble of the year, and then to take the shot with only 22 seconds in your own end, and then to run the kickoff back, I mean, that's pretty much 21 points. You're going in for a touchdown, you end up fumbling for another touchdown, and they run back a kickoff for a touchdown. So that's really tough to overcome. They kind of got the momentum going in the second half, but just really stalled out. It's some questionable. Does Kirby Smart know that you could just walk off the field and give them an automatic delay of game to run a whole team out there? That I couldn't believe what I was watching. And then to jump offside, just the icing on the cake, I guess.
Yeah, Freeman got him on that one, and he complained a little bit in the post game about it being illegal. I thought it was a legal play. I just thought that Notre Dame was better prepared in that situation. It's situational football. Chris, what about the games on New Year's Day? Texas getting out to a lead and having to hang on for dear life in double overtime, and Ohio State blowing the doors off of Oregon.
Well, a lot of people, when I was watching the game in the first half, was like, "Oh, this is another blowout. No shot for ASU." But as the game progressed, you could see that ASU was actually dominating the game. I mean, they had the kicker issues. They had the play at the 2-yard line when they couldn't get in. They got stopped another time on fourth down. But if you looked at it, they dominated the game. 510 yards to 375, 29 first downs to 17. Texas only had 53 rushing yards, and I'm very concerned. If you're a Texas fan, you have to play Ohio State. I'm no Ohio State fan, but this team looks like a well-oiled machine. Looks like Day has the monkey off his back. Jeremiah Smith, I mean, unbelievable. And then Will Howard, they wouldn't let him on the stage the other night, but he's playing like a man possessed. It's like a whole new renaissance after that Michigan loss. If you look at it, I mean, you can get Ohio State to win the national championship at plus 110. I think that's a pretty solid bet. You're almost a 7-point favorite here, and if you beat Texas, you're going to be at least a 7-point favorite over Notre Dame or Penn State. Those two offenses that have had trouble moving the ball and some questionable play calling on Penn State. I think that's a real solid play if you get Ohio State plus 110 to win the whole thing right now.
Yeah, Jeremiah Smith, I think, is the best player still playing college football right now, in my opinion. They have no answer. I don't know if anybody has an answer for him. He is
18 yet?
Yeah, I guess. I guess he's 18 going on 19, but he's the best player left, still lacing him up for my money right now. All right, so the look ahead now, Notre Dame minus a 1.5, and we're looking at Ohio State. I'm seeing 6 right now. I saw some 6.5s early this morning. Some early thoughts on these games because one of them will be done by the time we get to talk to you again next week.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of going to like the under in the Notre Dame-Penn State game. It seems like the Notre Dame offense, I mean, with Love injured, and, I'm not sure if he's going to be, healthy. He wasn't healthy for the game the other day, so I'm not sure if he's going to be ready to run. And it seems like most of their offense, like you said, is kind of like Riley Leonard, just gutting it out, getting to the edge, or, squeezing up the middle for 3 yards on a third and short. They don't really do or have many explosive plays in the passing game. I mean, their explosive plays are the running back. So And I think Penn State has been able to stop the run, and the reverse is Penn State does the same thing. Their most explosive players are the Ty Warren or their running game too. So I can see that being grinded out, similar type of game to the Georgia game. So I would lean under there. And I saw 53. I actually played it last night over in the Texas-Ohio State game. You get an indoor fast track at the Jerry Dome, and I'm not sure how good this Texas defense it really is. I mean, Arizona State moved it up and down the field. I mean, Scatterbo was unbelievable. I really think that 53 is a little short there. So I would lean over in the Ohio State game and under in the Penn State game, and I like Ohio State to run the table.
Chris, let's take a look at the NFL this weekend. I'm curious your philosophy in the handicapping a Week 18, whether it be two teams that don't have anything to play for, or one team has something to play for, the other team doesn't, and maybe that's baked into the line. We got a 20-point favorite out there tomorrow in Baltimore, or in the case of the Vikings and Lions, two teams with everything to play for.
Yeah, I'll touch on that Cleveland game in a second, but that's a really great question. You have teams that have to win, and I put have in quotation marks, and then you have teams that it would help them to win. So this situation with the Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game is Cincinnati has to win. I really don't understand the spread. Cincinnati is laying 2.5 at Pittsburgh. This is the same Cincinnati that just lost December 1st to Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. The same Cincinnati offensive line that gave up 4 sacks to Pittsburgh. And the same Cincinnati defense that gave up 44 points to the Pittsburgh offense, which really hasn't been that great against some of these other teams. So Cincinnati still has a world of hurt on the offensive line and the defensive the whole entire defense. I know Burrow is the flashy name, and they got Higgins and Chase, but I'm just not sure how they can be laying points at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh still would like to win this game. They don't want to have to go to Baltimore the first round. They'd rather play Houston. So that's a huge advantage for them. You kind of want Pittsburgh to win this game, and I think a great teaser play if you can get Pittsburgh up to 8.5 or 9, and then you pair it with say Minnesota the late game on Sunday. Another team decimated with injuries, Detroit. You're getting a team that's just on fire offensively in Minnesota. Donald's making all the throws, 2 great wide receivers, good running back, a defense that's flying all around the field. I think those are 2 good numbers where you get over the touchdown for the teaser. You get Pittsburgh and Minnesota. A couple other things I wanted to point out. Another game where they have to win, Denver. They're laying 11 against Kansas City, and I know Kansas City's not going to have Mahomes and Wentz is going to play, but their defense without Chris Jones last week still held Pittsburgh to 10 points. You can't bench everyone on the team. I mean, guys have to play. It's only a 53-man roster. I think 11 is a lot for a Denver team that I frankly don't think is very good at all. Most of their wins have come against the dregs of the league. Maybe Casey completely lays down, but 11 points, that's a lot. I'm taking the 11 with Kansas City, and I'm going to play that teaser, Pittsburgh and Minnesota, getting them both over the touchdown on Sunday.
You said you wanted to say something about the Browns, who are now a 20-point dog with Bailey Zappi at quarterback.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make. So Zappi, I came from New England. I'm a Patriots fan, and I actually liked the kid. He didn't really have much to work with. And Mitch Moss from VSiN on Follow the Money put out a New Year's resolution tweet saying, what's your resolution for this year, 2025? And my response to Mitch as a joke was, I'm never, ever, 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 ever betting on the Cleveland Browns again. But I go, but a side note was if they named Zappi the starter, it would be really tough for me to resist. And then they name him the starter, and the line goes up 3 points. So I just took a little gander on plus 20 with Zappi. I think he'll be able to move the ball a little bit. You can't figure that Baltimore's going to be going all out. They know they're going to win the game, but maybe in the second half they rest a couple guys, and the back door should be open all day with 20 points. I figure. Anyone confident in Cleveland has been able to move the ball. The 2 incompetent guys, DTR and Watson, haven't been able to. I mean, Winston's moved it. He just ends up, getting picked off in the end zone. But I think Zappi will move it a little bit. And I like, you're going to get, how often do you get to take 20 points in an NFL game? Let's take it.
Oh, almost never. And I'm really just bewildered. The total's 41.5. Baltimore's a 20-point favorite, and the total's 41.5. Okay, I mean, if Cleveland just dresses out, you would think that they've got an outside shot to cover here. Hey, Chris, Happy New Year! Thank you for spending some time with us, and we'll look forward to talking with you next Friday.
I enjoy it every Friday. Thanks. Say hi to Max for me. Tell him we should use him instead of Mac Jones for the. Instead of Drake May. We need the lookalike in there. I want that number one pick.
Hey, Chris, don't worry. New Year's resolutions are meant to be broken. So if you're betting the Browns, that's okay. That's okay. We all do it.
Hey, look, I had to get Jimmy out the Titans, so everybody's got their little weakness. Chris, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right, Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year. We're brought to you by Home Bank, Louisiana-based since 1908. Personal and business banking solutions for nearly any need. Right now, some great rates on CDs with low minimum balances to get in. If your New Year's resolution is to get your financial house a little bit better in order, take it to Home Bank. Local bankers here in Baton Rouge, corporate, Sherwood Forest, Longform Village, and Bluebonnet. Also locations in Acadiana, New Orleans, the North Shore, Natchez, and Houston. Visit home24bank.com for more information. Home Bank, member FDIC. Take a break here live at Rufino's. Live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jimmy, Charlie, and Troy. Three best buddies sitting around talking sports bets. Let's welcome in Troy Macker from Bet Rivers.
And we do welcome in Troy as we return here at Rufino's on Highland Road. Troy, Happy New Year. How are you?
Same to you. Thanks for having me on again.
All right. How's the move going, man? How's you were in transit. You had boxes the last time we talked to you. How's the move going right now?
Well, we've at least settled in to our in-laws, and so most of the boxes have been organized. So this week and next week, we've been here for 2 weeks now, and we're about to get settled, which is what I imagine what will be like when we move into our new house. But the chaos, we've decided most of it.
Well, I'm glad the holiday parties are done, right? You're past that part, so okay. You can see where you're moving forward at this point. It's good to hear. We were concerned about you. There's a lot going on for you between weddings and holiday parties and all the stuff you have to do for work. So glad you settled in. How did the game turn out for you guys between Georgia and Notre Dame? Because, Troy, depending on when you bet this thing, you could have been with a point on either side, Notre Dame or Georgia, depending on when you took your action.
Yeah, this game, or last night's game, resulted in a loss for the sportsbook. Not a big one, but it is, if there's been, 8 playoff games, I believe that we've taken losses in 6 of them. This was one of the smaller losses, but I think it's due, and that reason is, like you mentioned, is you could get this game at different prices, and we also took a lot of offline money. The under-hitting was big because, at least for the sports book, if the over had hit, that would have been, a significant ad for the public. But, 55% of the money was on Notre Dame to cover, 61% of the money was on Notre Dame to win. And the tickets are similar, 54% of the tickets on Notre Dame to win and 55% of the tickets on Notre Dame to cover. So really it was, the under that could have made this a much bigger loss for the sports book. But, we've been taking it on the chin in these bowl games. I believe we've lost 10. If you include the playoffs, we've lost 10 times, I think, and 6 of them are in the 6-figure losses. Certainly, we have been able to make it up in some games. I believe the Penn State-Boise State game was a big win for us, but the public has been, for a large part, having their way in bowl season.
A lot of the favorites in the first round, of course. I don't know if you got this number in front of you, Troy, but what would the difference in the opening line had Carson Beck been 100% healthy? I'm just curious what his point spread value is.
Well, let's see. It opened in and around Georgia minus 3.5, and I think that was before they knew officially that he was out, but I think the inclination was he wasn't going to play. He had already traveled, to Germany or something to get a third opinion. So I think, if Beck was playing, it might have been Georgia 4.5, maybe. I don't know if it would have gotten to 6. But I think it would have been around 4.5 if I had to guess.
All right, let's take a look ahead to the two national semifinals. We're showing right now that Ohio State is about a 6-point favorite over Texas, and Penn State about a 1.5. What I'm seeing right now over Notre Dame. I'm sorry, Notre Dame 1.5 over Penn State. My apology. Thoughts about the opening lines on those games and early action?
Yeah, well, I think books and, TV people have to be very happy with this foursome. Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas. I think bookmakers are also happy with this foursome. You don't really get a super weak final, and I think the potential for a Notre Dame-Ohio State final will be salivating for sportsbook people because Notre Dame obviously is, other than Alabama, is America's college football team. They're the Duke of college football. And Ohio State is, right there. A blue blood. They've garnered all the attention because obviously they can't beat Michigan, but they're right now looking like the most dominant team in football. So things are lining up well. We've already taken a lot of money on the Ohio State-Texas game, and given that there's been only a few hours since the lines were available for Notre Dame, Penn State, taking a lot of money there as well. Ohio State right now, there's a lot of money on them to cover. So much so that 80% of the money is on Ohio State to cover, 78% of the tickets as well. For the Ohio State to win outright, 81% of the money and almost 81% of the tickets as well. So the only one difference there is, 65% of the money is on the under, 82% of the tickets are on the over. But, it's hard to not be impressed with what Ohio State did, especially through the air. I see this game potentially being the most wagered-on game of the season. The Notre Dame game versus Georgia currently holds that mark. And in the Notre Dame-Penn State game, 80% of the money is on Penn State, 71% of the tickets is on 80% of the money is on Notre Dame, 71% of the tickets also on Notre Dame to win. And then the spread, it's early, but 65% of the money and 63% of the tickets is on Notre Dame minus 1.5.
And for the futures, Ohio State a pretty significant favorite to win the whole thing. You take in Buckeye money, hand over fist to win the whole thing?
We had at the beginning of the season, I think they were number 2 in handle, and we've been garnering a lot of money on them throughout the season. Especially as Georgia money stopped coming in, because while Georgia was good, they clearly had flaws. This was not an electric team or a dominant team we've seen in the past. Ohio State really has been the consistent garner of a lot of the tickets and handle. But interesting, the largest futures bet we took was, I think it's like $45,000 on Texas at like 12-1 or something. So there is a big ticket out there on the Longhorns to win it all. But I think, whoever wins Ohio State or Texas is probably, that's going to be our biggest liability. Even though Notre Dame, as I mentioned, America's team, you could catch them at really long odds. I think after they lost to Northern Illinois, you could get them at 75-1, 100-1, just because there was such a drop-off in the market because of how hard it is to win the whole thing.
The hate in the South for Notre Dame has subsided as their program, wasn't, competing for national championships. Maybe that'll, gin up a little bit here if they make it to the national championship game again. Troy, Week 18 in the NFL. Some early trends where some of the money is heading. As some of these games mean something to some or both, and some of these games mean nothing to either team.
Yeah, and this is going to be a very tricky week. Last 3 weeks it's been heavy favorites. The public has been winning for the most part, at least on spread and money line. I think, if there's been 16 games, the favorites have covered and won in double digits. But this week, a lot of big spreads, especially in games that don't necessarily matter. So it's interesting to see, Ravens money line versus the Browns is the most wagered on play. Certainly the Bengals to win and the Bengals -2 are the second and third most wagered on. So that makes sense. That is a competitive game. Pittsburgh is still fighting. The Bengals need this win to even have a shot at it. When you look at some of the strong plays, Buccaneers -14 at New Orleans. Certainly the Buccaneers have something to play for. New Orleans doesn't, but that's 2 touchdowns. That's a lot. Packers -10 versus Chicago. I think the Packers are still playing for some seeding. Chicago obviously not playing for anything. But those are the only 2 plays by money that are backed by at least 80%. The Packers -10 is 81% of the money and Buccaneers minus 14 is 94% of the money. It's just really strong plays for, double digits, which are tough in the NFL, because as it is any given Sunday. But, the other teams we're seeing, Bills minus 2 at New England is, 78% in both money and tickets. Commanders minus 6.5 at Dallas is around 75% of money and 70% of tickets. So those are the along with the Buccaneers, the plays we're seeing that are being strongly backed, both money and tickets.
Minus 2,500 is what the Ravens are on the money line. It's an NFL game. Still an NFL game, right? Cleveland still has a professional football team, right? I'm not wrong about that. Minus 2,500. I'll see that too often. Troy, 20-point spread and minus 2,500. Of course, follow Troy at Bet Rivers at Troy Macker, MACHIR on X. Troy, as always, we appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you next week in advance of, after one of the national semifinals, in advance of the other one. Have a great weekend.
You do the same. Thanks, guys.
And we're here at Ruffino's. Come on by, the restaurant open for lunch now. The crispy calamari, the Prince Edward Island mussels, and the scallops, part of your appetizer features today. Chilean sea bass and prime rib on your entree menu here today at Ruffino's. Live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch.
You've been putting off home improvements for the new year. Maybe that's your New Year's resolution. There's some things that you got to fix around the house, but you don't know exactly what you're doing. Hey, that's kind of like me. I'm not great at this stuff. The experts at the Thibodeau store, the Pierre Parts store, can help you out. They're going to make sure you get the right supplies. They're going to make sure that you're not wasting money. They're going to make sure you're not wasting time with improper techniques. Trust me, it's a lot better to be able to talk to somebody and ask questions than to just watch a YouTube video. So whether you're doing some painting, whether you are pouring some concrete, whether there's some plumbing work that needs to be done, just a little bit of woodworking, all of these little small projects that you can take care of yourself and save yourself some money, experts at the Thibodeau store can help you out. Plumbing supplies, electrical supplies, tons of power tools and hand tools available online, ThibodeauStore.com, with free delivery available there. Need lumber delivered from the Pierre Parts store, they can take care of that for you too. Also, lots of fishing gear, tons of grills, and crawfish pots, jambalaya pots, custom-made cypress furniture. They've got it all at the Thibodeau store. 900 St. Patrick Highway in Thibodeau, and online it's ThibodeauStore.com.
Live at lunch with Odd and Hanny from Ruffino's on Highland Road on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Max at one time was the king of the props on this show. So we got some props that we want to just make you aware of over the weekend as they relate to bonuses that players have in their contracts. You think this is a little bit of incentive? Just going to throw this out there. Mike Evans for the Buccaneers playing against the Saints, and his old nemesis Marshawn Lattimore is not there anymore. Needs 5 catches and 85 yards. He gets $3 million if he gets those. Max, what's his totals?
100.5 receiving yards. Nothing on receptions yet, but no Lattimore for the Saints.
85 yards and 5 catches will unlock $3 million. Geno Smith needs 186 yards to cash in $2 million. What's his total?
247.5 passing yards for Geno Smith.
They're playing the Rams. He had 363 yards against the Rams when they played him in week number 9. Josh Sweat needs 2 sacks for Philadelphia to earn $1 million. Now, this is not as easily manipulated as the offensive numbers, but it's one of the bigger bonuses out there. 2 sacks to earn $1 million. The Giants are one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. Not sure if we got we don't have defensive backs yet. J.K. Dobbins for the Chargers needs 58 yards. Now, these are some of the smaller bonuses. $150,000 bonus there. Zach Ertz, he would need 9 catches and 90 yards. Each of those is worth $250,000. If he were to catch 2 touchdown passes, that's worth another $250,000. And if Marquez Valdez-Scantling, new Saint, gets a touchdown, $250,000. Watch your anytime touchdowns if they are looking to get him one of those. Hour number 2 straight ahead here from Ruffino's. Live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch with Odd and Hanny from Ruffino's on Highland Road on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
And we return here at Ruffino's for Live at Lunch. Come on by and see us for lunch today. The crispy calamari with the pickled lunchbox peppers today. Prince Edward Island mussels, the diver scallops with the butternut squash puree. Chilean sea bass today with the chilled cucumber broth and prime rib. The horseradish cream and roasted potatoes, all on your feature menu here today at Ruffino's. Let's bring in Bruce Marshall out in Las Vegas. Bruce, good afternoon or good morning where you are. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Hanny. Not so good for me because I'm thinking, Ohio State, Texas. I mean, for me, that's sort of like, the Dodgers playing the Lakers. I really don't like either of them too much.
Well, it could have been worse. It could have been USC, right?
Yeah, it could have been. That's about the only thing. It could have been worse. But that's what we got here, and that's what we got to look forward to next week.
Well, what'd you pull out of the quarterfinal matchups? Pick your favorite game, but what was your big takeaways from this?
Yeah, Ohio State's playing at a different level now, and we didn't see that really throughout the regular season. I mean, they had several struggles. I mean, this offense often misfired. We talked about the Michigan game at length after that one on November 30. And in other games during the season, they struggled. I mean, the Penn State game wasn't a fireworks show. They had a lot of trouble with Nebraska and a few other games. But they've obviously hit stride here, and they're starting so quick in these games. And they're just blowing Tennessee and Oregon out of the water early. The way they're starting these games, they're giving themselves a tremendous advantage. We didn't see that during the regular season from them, and they just look like they're playing on a different level. And I get in sort of that same sick feeling I got after the Dodgers beat the Padres in the first playoff round in October there. It was like, God, I'm afraid the Dodgers might actually win this thing now. So I'm really afraid of that with Ohio State. But one thing I would say that Texas may have its chance here is Texas has started quick, and I think that might be important just to quell some of that early momentum with Ohio State. And these are still college kids, even though they're getting paid sort of like pros now, and certainly at Ohio State they are. But you can have some fluctuations in efforts week to week, and I just want to see what happens when somebody stands up to Ohio State. Texas has not looked as sharp as Ohio State, but they have started quick, and that might be something to dull the Buckeyes here. But they are, 6.5 point favorite in this game. It is being played in Arlington there, so there's sort of a regional edge there for Texas. But they're going to really have to come out firing. I'm really scared Ohio State is just looking too good, but we'll see.
If they win the national championship, they still going to fire Ryan Day?
It's funny, we don't hear that talk too much now, do we? So, no, I don't think so. I don't think so.
And of course, I asked that tongue in cheek, but I'll still I remember this call. Of all the time I spent in radio, I'll never forget the call. The guy called us after LSU won the national championship and said, "Well, it's the worst thing that could happen to LSU because now we're stuck with Les Miles." And it's ridiculous as that sounded. I thought about Ohio State. They were ready to fire Ryan Day 2 weeks ago, and not one of these fake firings, one of these real you can't beat Michigan, you have to go firings, and now they're the odds-on favorite to win the national title. So I guess they keep him, Bruce, right?
Yeah, although there are some Ohio State people who would rather beat Michigan than win a national title. I mean, there's that craze there, but I think he's probably on safe footing if he wins the whole thing. But I swear, if he loses the game this week, there'll be a few people out there saying, "Well, we got to get somebody else." But no, he's not going anywhere.
LSU's never had a rival of that magnitude where this fan base that I feel pretty plugged into has said, rather beat them than win it all, or rather beat them than win the conference. They've never had, maybe in the 50s with Ole Miss, I don't know, I wasn't around then, but I don't, in my lifetime, they've never had a rival of that magnitude, the hate between Ohio State and Michigan. So I don't understand that line of thinking. I'd rather win a championship, but that's me.
Yeah, me too. I agree with you. Actually, it's lucky LSU doesn't have that, because I think it's a little crazy with Ohio State, and the other with Michigan too. It's all just down so much to that one game, and consider ourselves blessed for not having to worry about that, not being a fan of either of those two.
Well, next week we'll be able to talk to you right up on top of Ohio State and Texas. But before that, Notre Dame and Penn State. This is on Thursday night, and the Irish, after that win yesterday in the Sugar Bowl, about 1.5 favorite over Penn State. Your early thoughts on Irish Nittany Lions?
I think they got the wrong team favored, and I wouldn't be surprised if that swings to Penn State a little bit before the kickoff next week down at the Orange Bowl. This one, offensive confidence. I know that's only part of the equation here, but I think there's a big edge to Penn State here. I mean, we've liked what Kotelnicki's done with this offense all year. We saw, they got two backs who are breakaway backs, and we saw Allen with the big run. We've seen Singleton with big runs this year. Tyler Warren is this year's Brock Bowers, and Aller has progressed in this new Kotelnicki offense. His stats didn't look too much different last year, although Penn State ran up a couple of really big scores against lesser opposition last year. They were much more consistent this year moving the ball. And I'm not sure Ohio, with Notre Dame here, that often had sort of a fire drill look yesterday, and it has throughout the season. And it's Riley Leonard's ability to improvise or just scramble out of the pocket. That's a major part of Notre Dame's offense. They just don't move that smoothly unless that happens or they pop a long run. So something tells me Penn State's going to get another shot at Ohio State. I don't know that we want to see that, but I think so. Penn State, I think they might actually have the best chance against Ohio State of the teams left, just from the game they play. Certainly could have won that game at State College during the season, and the offense is percolating pretty nice. I will say this about Notre Dame, Georgia. I think Kirby, if he had to do it again, though I don't know from his post-game comments, but when he's talking at the end of the first half there, and that's when that game turned around, the turnover and the strip sack on Stockton. After the game, Kirby said, "Well, it's our 2-minute offense. We think we got to still try something." Well, there's only 38 seconds left at that point. There's not 2 minutes left, and your own 25 against that defense. I think it would have been much more prudent just to go in at halftime down 6-3. I know that's in hindsight, but I think that was a big error by Georgia. That plus the kickoff return the second half, that game flipped in about 45 seconds of game time there. So I'm not sure that was as convincing for Notre Dame as the scoreline makes it seem.
And I agree with that, Bruce. But I'll add to it. Let's say that they had gone in 6-3. I've still got a Trevor Etienne fumble inside the red zone. I've still got a 67-yard pass that instead of 1st and 10 at the 11, I got to play 1st and 10 at the 26 because of a sideline infraction. Yeah. I've still got another fumble for Georgia. I've still got a dropped bomb that would have put them 1st and 10 right about the Notre Dame 20, about 5 minutes into the third quarter. I mean, that sequence that you're talking about is obviously the biggest one. But it wasn't all. I mean, Georgia did this to themselves kind of all day yesterday.
Yeah, they were their own worst enemy in that sideline infraction there. I mean, that was a huge moment in the game. But they weren't. It was a couple of big plays, but they just weren't moving, that consistently. And of course, then the kickoff return turned out to be the big play. So that bang, 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 right at the end of the first half and the start of the second half, that was the game. But I still think at that spot, this 2-minute drill is one thing, but 38 seconds ain't 2 minutes. And
no.
Especially that defense you're playing against, all those ball hawks there, and and the pocket awareness for a guy like Stockton to get stripped, get sacked like that is something you got to think about. And that the risk reward at that point, I think they would have been fine going down 6-3. This is all hindsight, but that's just my thinking on it.
Bruce, I don't know if you got a recommendation on any of the remaining bowl games. If people are kind of killing time, there's a couple of games today and one tomorrow. Probably the biggest one is Minnesota and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech down 14 starters in that game. They've been ramsacked in the transfer portal, including a couple of kids that are coming to LSU. Not sure if you got a recommendation on any of those games before we move to the NFL.
Well, maybe Minnesota a little bit. I mean, they have won 7 straight bowls, the last 5 with PJ as the coach, and they've covered all those games too. Brosmer, the quarterback, transfer from New Hampshire, really turned into a nice leader for them this season. You talked about Virginia Tech having all these guys lost to the portal. Now, the quarterback here, Drones isn't in the portal, but he wasn't playing the last month of the season, their quarterback, because of a leg injury. He's not going to play today, apparently. And Watson, who played the last 2 games at quarterback and didn't look so bad in the Virginia game, will get the start. But this looks like a very problematic game for Virginia Tech, and the ACC has had all sorts of trouble in the postseason here, Hanny. They only got 2 wins. Syracuse over depleted Washington State, Louisville by 1 point over Washington, and depending upon when you bet those games, they may not have a point spread cover in the postseason yet either. So that is a real negative for Virginia Tech there. So I could certainly see Minnesota there. North Texas has got sort of the same problem tonight against Texas State. They closed the season really slow. Quarterback Morris is not going to play. They're going with the backup quarterback. Texas State won this game big over Rice last year. That might be worth a look. And Liberty tomorrow just doesn't. And the quarterback Salter is gone. They were a poor point spread performer. Buffalo closed the season hot. You want to lay points at Buffalo, perhaps? So there's a few angles at these games left today and tomorrow.
All right, NFL, Week 18, some with some to play for, some with nothing to play for, some with a ton to play for. Recommendations in the Saturday-Sunday card in the NFL?
Well, I'd be careful on some of these games thinking that if a team is going to just, play backups, that's a bad effort forthcoming. Listen, everybody, all these guys who are playing are trying. If teams want to lose either for draft position or they're trying to hold everybody out, it doesn't mean the guys they put in there aren't going to be trying. This makes me go right to the Kansas City game against Denver. Denver now, this line has popped up because the Chiefs are resting a lot of players. Carson Wentz is going to get the start at quarterback, but he won a game last year in this spot against the Niners in the last game. The Niners were also playing backups too, but he's not the worst backup. The Chiefs won a game last year with Blaine Gabbert against the Chargers in the final game when they were resting players. This is just a lot of points and a lot of pressure on Denver here. I think Denver can win, and they have played Kansas City tough, even though they've only beaten them once in the last 9 years, and that was last season. But laying 9.5, 10 is a little much, so I think that's a little steep. Now, in the case of the Rams, Sean McVay is gearing it down this week. In their case, though, last year they had Wentz in that last game against the Niners. This year it's Jimmy G. Jimmy G is in for Stafford. He has not taken a snap all season, including preseason. He didn't take a snap. And because he had that suspension, too. It's basically been since October of 2023 when he last really had any meaningful action. He took a couple of snaps for the Raiders in the last game against Denver a year ago. But I think there's a big drop-off coming here for the Rams. And Seattle has itself to kick for not making this a winner-take-all in the NFC West. But apparently they're going to play starters. Geno Smith has got some real contract incentives here. So I think that's interesting for Seattle. So I'd go ahead and lay the points to Seattle. One other one, watch tomorrow with the Pittsburgh game against Cincinnati. We know what's on the line for the Bengals there. For Pittsburgh, a win guarantees them the 5 seed. That means something in the AFC. That means you play Houston in the first round instead of probably Baltimore. So Pittsburgh should be trying to play. But should the Bengals win tomorrow, that means the Chargers could move up to 5 if they beat the Raiders on Sunday. If Pittsburgh wins, the Chargers are locked at 6, and Harbaugh has already said he's then going to rest Herbert and all them. So in that Charger game, you might want to wait. But if that's the case, this is an interesting stat. The Raiders are playing a little better at the end of the season. They're still trying. Aiden O'Connell as a starting quarterback, 13-3 against the spread with O'Connell as a starting quarterback. That's a surprisingly good number. So if the Chargers gear it down, and even if they don't, I might think the Raiders are worth a look on Sunday.
That Geno Smith stat is amazing. He needs 186 yards to unlock a $2 million bonus. Geno Smith, I had to look this up, has thrown for more yards this year than Lamar Jackson, than Patrick Mahomes, than Josh Allen, than Justin Herbert, than Jaden Daniels. I mean, he's thrown a ton of interceptions, but he's thrown for a boatload of yards this year, sometimes in losing efforts. But the number is up over 4,000 for Geno Smith, and I didn't realize that.
And Charlie, a massive split for him this year. Indoors, he's been much better. They're on the road in L.A., so it might help his chances as well.
Indoors, right?
It is indoors.
As long as it's not raining
Seattle,
sideways,
unfortunately
right?
not.
Yeah.
But,
all right, Bruce. Anything? I would say it's a great slate in college basketball tomorrow, but I think every game, every play-in date in the SEC is going to be a great slate this year. We got Florida and Kentucky at Rupp. That game starts at 10 a.m. Central Time for some reason. We're starting to see some of these lines come out now. We're showing Kentucky 2.5 there. Arkansas is at Tennessee. Alabama is hosting Oklahoma. Those are all ranked matchups. Anything on your early radar for SEC basketball tomorrow?
Well, those are all interesting, and I'll be taking a look, at more of those. I've also, Georgia and Ole Miss is kind of interesting. Georgia's been a lot better than I thought this year too, so that's going to be an interesting one tomorrow. So we'll be keeping our eye on that. There's a few actually tonight that I'm looking at, and this is sort of a Metro Atlantic day. Merrimack, we haven't talked about them too much. They're in the midst of a pretty good season. You are laying some points at an early tip-off, 2 p.m. Central against Fairfield. I might actually give Merrimack a look. How about this one? Manhattan is playing Siena up in Albany, and Manhattan is over 9 straight games. The Jaspers over 9 straight. Total is only about 140 here. They've been going over that, and Siena just scored 83 in its last game. I think that total is a little bit low. One other one tonight, Marist is playing Iona up in New Rochelle. Marist is 9-2 right now. John Dunn has got a very good backcourt, and that's a guard-dominated league. Iona has been struggling a bit. Tobin Anderson only 4-9. They do have a couple of recent wins, but Marist has been the better team thus far, and they're getting 2 points up at Iona. It looks like the market doesn't quite believe in the Red Foxes yet, but I do. So how about a Metro Atlantic trifecta there? Merrimack and over in Manhattan, Siena, and then Marist in your big Friday triple play.
You win the prize, Bruce. You said we hadn't talked about Merrimack much. We haven't talked about Merrimack at all. So you win first Merrimack mention of the college basketball season. We'll take winners, as Jimmy would say if he was here, anywhere we can get them. Bruce, we always appreciate the time. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next weekend between the college football semifinals.
Okay, Charlie. Thank you.
And we are brought to you by Louisiana Health and Injury Centers, helping you deal with pain. Dr. Michael Goff and his staff have done a great job for our family over the years. Back pain, neck pain, muscle soreness, things that are keeping you from getting a good night's sleep or maybe restricting your range of motion. Let them target those problem areas, get you to feeling better. I've seen it work. It's worked for me. So head on by Airline Highway, Plank Road, Jefferson Highway near Drusilla, whether it's just a series of exercises and stretches that'll get you to feeling better, or electric nerve stimulation, cryo, ultrasound therapy, dry needling. They'll get the technique that gets you to feeling better. Dr. Michael Goff, Louisiana Health and Injury Centers. We'll talk to Gordy Rush when we come back. He was down at the Superdome yesterday for the Sugar Bowl, also at the Texas Bowl with LSU. We'll talk to him when we come back here live at lunch from Rufino's 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch with Odd and Hanny from Rufino's on Highland Road on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Remember, the show's available on demand, 1045ESPN.com and at LouisianaSports.net. We bring in Gordy Rush, who was down in the Superdome yesterday for Notre Dame in Georgia. G, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Charlie.
Before we get to the football part of it, I just have to ask, because I thought ESPN did a really poor job in the lead-up to the game about the circumstances surrounding the game, and you've been to many, many games in that building, Gordy. What was it like yesterday?
Well, I tell you, it reminded me of the Super Bowl. I've been to the last two Super Bowls down there. The Niners, was it Niners Ravens, and then the Rams after 9/11, and the security was similar. I mean, it was not your normal choke points, if you will. I mean, they pushed it out on Poitras, but by and large, it was kind of empty down there in New Orleans, and it was good to see a lot of New Orleans people that went back, like myself. I wasn't going to go, but I felt obliged to get down there, support the city, and and it was good to see a lot of locals that I think gobbled up some of the tickets that the Georgia and Notre Dame fans had to let go of with the travel issues.
All right, so now to the football part of it. Georgia with a lot of mistakes, but between the turnovers, the sideline infraction, the dropped deep ball that could have set them up for a score, and, of course, the sequence at the end of the first half, beginning of the second half. Notre Dame able to win this game, and kudos to them, Gordy. But, man, I thought Georgia, they had some opportunities and just never could quite take advantage yesterday.
No, they did. And give Notre Dame credit. Look, that Notre Dame's come a long way from that national championship game against Alabama, and I've seen them in spots. But, they had the athleticism in their front seven really on both sides to go with the size. They've always had size, but thinking back to Notre Dame, that's where they got caught up. And, I mean, defensively, they speed-wise, they matched Georgia for size and speed across the board, and it was a heck of a physical football game.
What did you think of Gunnar Stockton?
I think that, he's got to be more consistent throwing the football. Obviously he's a great athlete, got a little Manziel in him, and I know he had a stellar high school career in Georgia. But, at some point in this conference, you got to plant your feet and throw the football, consistently from the pocket. And, Notre Dame had a lot to do with that, but he's got to get better with that.
What kind of shot do you give the Irish moving forward? They're actually a small favorite against Penn State next week.
Yeah, I think they've got a great shot. I mean, I was impressed with them against Texas A&M. Of course, that was the first game of the season. There's been a lot of football since then. Not dynamic on offense, but they're steady, and we know how good Mike Denbrock is. And, if you made me guess the final game, I would take Notre Dame, Ohio State right now.
Marcus Freeman is not somebody that we're unfamiliar with. LSU tried very hard to hire him when he took the defensive coordinator's job at Notre Dame before he ascended to the head coach. He's really put together a nice foundation there. Mm-hmm. Some of the things that you see them do they're impressive in their execution. You followed Freeman for quite a while. You and I did the pre and post game when he was playing for Ohio State against LSU. Just kind of give me your assessment of what he's built there.
Well, everybody's been impressed with Freeman, as a motivator, as obviously a football coach, and he surrounded himself with an excellent staff. Look, I think the key to all four teams that are still remaining in the college football playoffs is that they've been able to keep more continuity than most. And when you talk about Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, and even Texas, you don't have as many transfers out of that program. They were able to go and help themselves. Notre Dame, I think they had 6 players that really, really impacted this team. Leonard, obviously, from Duke, the edge rusher from Duke, the returner from Marshall. And I think a day and an age where you have so many people going in and out of the transfer portal, somebody that can keep some continuity going, a base, a foundation to work with where you can add some pieces each and every year. Look, I think you're going to get more consistent play. One thing I thought that jumped out at me in 2024, it's a lot harder to win on the road. Not that the environment's changed, but because you're bringing a lot of new faces, maybe in the Florida field for the first time. They don't handle the moment the way that LSU didn't handle the moment in the second half. And I think there's something to be said for having some continuity and some people that have played together.
Let's take a look back at the Texas Bowl because we didn't get a chance to do post-game there. The win for LSU, the positives and concerns you take out of that as we go into the offseason and start to look ahead towards spring.
Well, I think, the positives, the offensive line. Obviously Baylor was not elite on defense, but, what little practice I had a chance to see both in Baton Rouge and down there in Houston, was really impressed with some of the young guys. And, they played well. And, again, going back to that foundation, I know there's some transfers coming in, but at least you have a foundation to work with that was a little bit of a question mark. I thought LSU, looking at, scouting Baylor, obviously I thought they were better in practice, better in talent-wise, and I think you and I talked about that on the pregame show. The other positive that I would take from this is I thought it was real revealing when Dave Aranda in one of his press conferences before the bowl game just went on and on about Garrett Nussmeier and talking about they hadn't seen a quarterback that can see the whole field the way that he can, that could check out of blitzes, against blitzes or when you drop, can check the runs, and they hadn't faced a quarterback quite like that. And it rang a bell for me, and I thought that, this offense evolved, and it was Joe Sloan and Cortez Hankton's first year calling it. And early on, against USC, it seemed like the offense was trying to be too perfect. It was counter-punching. They were allowing defenses to dictate them the pace of what was going on. And as this offense evolved, I thought they did a better job of going with a little bit better rhythm, getting to the line of scrimmage, and maybe just one move, one check instead of multiples. And it just seemed like the offense got better as the season went on. That being said, they've got to find a way to be more efficient in the run game, and that was a big question mark this year. But that was the takeaway for me. I liked the approach offensively. I thought there was good rhythm in this game against Baylor. On the flip side, I think the big weakness has been on the back end and the safety play, and there's some to clean up there, and I think they'll get that cleaned up with, personnel coming in or some of the young kids stepping up.
On offense, Gordy, two things stuck out to me. Number one, the nightmare that Chris Hilton and Trey'Dez Green are. Those two are the big ones for me. Hilton with the deep speed that they just did not have all year, and I wasn't sure if it was going to happen for Chris Hilton this year with the injury, but what a difference he makes in the Oklahoma game and in this game, because he simply has speed that nobody else on this team really has. The second part is Trey'Dez Green. I thought, it was a lot to ask of him to come in and play right there as a true freshman. The physicality of the position, I thought, maybe got to him a little bit in the first half of the season, but he's matured. I saw some things out of him physically in that game, as an inline player that I really, quite honestly, didn't expect. Those two guys are the matchup nightmares. Look, it didn't happen all season, but it started to happen towards the end, and as we gaze toward 2025, that's got to be really encouraging.
Well, it is encouraging because you looked at Baylor, and so much of the time Baylor had to play a shell, and they had to back up, and it opened up some running lanes. And I know Baylor was not very good in the secondary, and LSU was able to move the ball basically at will when they wanted to. But you think back to USC, the opening game. USC sitting there squatting on our receivers. At no point is USC, who's not elite defensively, had any business playing press coverage against LSU's wide receivers. Mike Elko, his opening comments after they lost the Las Vegas Bowl, said our biggest problem is the same problem we had all year. We could not stop the forward pass, except against LSU. That's because they were able to squat on LSU, get some pressure on Nussmeier, and LSU was unable to stretch the field. So, I mean, without a doubt, I think Hilton coming back, Green's such a huge target, kid coming in from Kentucky, you've got help on the way, you've got some good young receivers. You've got to have a vertical stretch to get people to back up and to stop them from doing like what Alabama did and simply just put 6 people up the box, have a linebacker 2 yards behind those 6 that's going to key blitz when your running back blocks, and just get after you. And I think that was the big problem LSU had this season is that, one, they couldn't stretch the field vertically, and because of that, it hurt the running game.
Gordy, last thing. I've got a 3-pronged basis for saying this. Number one, that LSU could be a top 5 team in the preseason next year. Number one is Nussmeier. There's a quarterback change at Georgia, at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. He'll probably be the preseason All-SEC quarterback. That's the first part. The second thing is LSU number one in the transfer portal. They're not done shopping. When people really look at this roster, they're going to say, hey, listen, this is significantly better than what they had last year. And then, of course, the recruiting class, which was good, a little stumble at the end, but was still very good. You buying that this could be a preseason top 5 team next year?
At top 10, and the reason you guys spend a little bit more time on it than I do, I'm still filtering out who's returning what. You look at Alabama's situation,
and it's not done. It's just not done.
I mean, you would talk about Alabama, for instance, and I had a chance to do some bowl prep. And when you look and see out of the top 10 high school prospects in Alabama, 8 went to Auburn, 1 went to Oregon, 1 went maybe to Miami. And Alabama got none. Maybe Matt Moscona is right about Alabama. So until I filter out and see who's where and what, it's hard for me to rank where LSU is. But the quarterback, it's huge, obviously, to bring him back. And I think you've addressed a lot of key players, and I think you're going to have some continuity in your coaching staff. And if they can hold everything together, definitely, I think they have a chance to be a top 10 preseason team.
Yeah, a really good chance that there'll only be one turnover. The tight end coach, Slade Nagel, on the coaching staff. That could change, but at least for now, Alabama co-defensive coordinator Colin Hitchler is out today, according to multiple reports. So they're going to be making some changes there. So it's 18 guys out, 5 in the transfer portal so far for Alabama. Again, that's going to change. That's going to change, but for right now, that's where we are. Gordy, have a good weekend, and we'll check in with you pretty soon.
Okay, Charlie. Take care.
Thanks a lot. We'll take a break here at Ruffino's. We got a pick from Paul Stone coming up and some thoughts on the games for the weekend live at Ruffino's. Live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch with Otten Hanny from Ruffino's on Highland Road on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
You're looking for something to do with you got 2 bowl games left today and 1 tomorrow. If you are looking for a little bit of an angle, our friend Paul Stone has a read on the Bahamas Bowl tomorrow, Buffalo and Liberty.
You're listening to Sports Bettor's Paradise on the Bet Rivers Network.
Yeah, kind of same old song here, Jimmy, but back on December 9th, again, when these numbers were posted market-wide, Liberty actually opened as a 2.5-point favorite, and now the tables have turned. Buffalo minus 2.5. But when Liberty was favored, that was before, as you mentioned, quarterback Caden Salter and 3 starting offensive linemen entered the transfer portal. And then you've got their running back, Quentin Cooley, who rushed for over 1,250 yards this year, who has opted out to prepare for the NFL draft. And Caden Salter, he's a talented guy, actually from outside of Dallas in Cedar Hill High School, fairly highly recruited, signed with Tennessee out of high school. Things didn't work out there in Knoxville, but he's got some talent. And as you mentioned, he and Cooley are kind of the two that drive that offensive engine for the Flames, and their absence will be felt immensely by Liberty. And they really, even with those 2 guys, when Cooley and Salter were playing, as you mentioned, they struggled the second half of the season. They lost to Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State, and Sam Houston in their final 6 regular season games, and had to go to overtime to beat UMass on the road. So they were not playing good football. Also, as you mentioned, the fact that last year, they qualified for a New Year's Six Bowl, did get, throttled by Oregon, but they were there. And certainly coming into this season, their expectations and their primary goal was to go 12-0 in the regular season, win the conference championship game, go 13-0. It would be against a really easy schedule, but make the committee think long and hard about their inclusion in the 12-team playoffs. So I kind of think for this team, it was pretty much playoffs or bust, and now they've got to play the Buffalo Bulls in a meaningless, to them, I think, from their perspective, bowl game played after New Year's. They've fallen well short of their regular season goals. They have several players who are critical now, no longer on the roster. So I think it kind of speaks to the fact that one would not expect Liberty to have a supreme effort in this game, and that's probably putting it mildly. So I think Buffalo's going to be more invested, and this is a minor point, but last year these teams played in non-conference in September. Liberty won that game 55-27. Some of these Buffalo players were certainly on that roster, so that gives them a little extra motivation, I believe. Again, we're on the wrong side of a 5-point line move, but it crossed 0, so that's not nearly as significant as most 5-point line moves. I think Buffalo's going to win this game. They just need to win by a field goal or more for us to get the money. I think Buffalo's going to do that. I like the Bulls minus 2.5 over Liberty.
That is a 10 a.m. start tomorrow morning on ESPN2. Buffalo, a 3-point favorite. All right, Max. Opening day in conference play, Southeastern Conference basketball tomorrow. We're seeing a couple of these lines start to trickle in. Another 10 a.m. start. We're going to early start tomorrow. 10 a.m. start for number 6 Florida and number 10 Kentucky. Cats a 2.5-point choice there. Florida's unbeaten. They were 13-0 in non-conference play, and Kentucky went 11-2 against what was, as usual for them, a pretty stout non-conference slate. They had a win against Duke. They had a win against Gonzaga. Both of those were or top 10 wins. They lost in the ACC SEC Challenge at Clemson. That was a real close ball game, and then they lost a game against Ohio State where somehow they got blown out by Ohio State. But that's one of the premier games, and we expected LSU will open up a favorite. We're waiting on that line. 3:30 tomorrow in the Assembly Center. I don't know how many games LSU is going to be favored in this year in the SEC, but this will be one of them.
You wouldn't think a whole lot of them. It looks like about a 2.5, 3-point favorite, depending on what kind of projection you're coming out with. Right now, LSU's power ranked as the second worst SEC team. Now that's not a real knock on them, because the worst team is 63rd in the country, and that's South Carolina. The SEC is stacked, as we've mentioned plenty of times. But, yeah, it's going to be tough for LSU to be favored in a whole lot of roles unless they get off to some sort of hot start. And they get a good chance early in the season with this game against Vanderbilt. And then they go on the road to Missouri, one of the weaker teams in SEC play. I'm not saying they're going to win that game, but it's a winnable game, which they need some of those before they get to 5 ranked teams in a row. The interesting thing about this game, Charlie, and this is a real opportunity. I think LSU, I don't want to say must win, but considering the schedule, it feels like this is one they're going to need to have, because Vanderbilt, not a team with a whole lot of size. They play with a whole lot of pace. They're going to push the pace. I think that kind of suits LSU, what they want to do. They don't really get a whole lot of offense at this point from their bigs, especially with Jalen Reed being out for the season. I think that could be a real loss for them throughout conference play. But in this game specifically, I don't think it'll affect them as much, because Vanderbilt plays a lot smaller. They're going to go up and down the court. I think that kind of fits what LSU does. They'll be able to get the defensive stops when they need. And being at home, I think, will help them. I think Vanderbilt not very good against the 3-ball defensively. That's something that Cam Carter and Sears will have to get involved with early. But I think being at home, this suits LSU, the style of play that they might want to play. It's going to be a higher scoring game. But as long as LSU limits the turnovers, which have been a bit of a problem for them, I think this is a decent matchup for them, one that they might not get a whole lot of going forward.
If you've paid no attention to college basketball yet, if you're one of those people that doesn't pay attention to college basketball until college football is over, or at least until conference play starts, what you need to know is that the SEC is the best it has ever been, and it's not hyperbole. The league went 185-23 in non-conference play. Now, a lot of times non-conference play is littered, and there were some this year, okay? You have to have bye games, which means that you just essentially, it's the rent-a-win version of basketball. You buy teams to come in that you are going to beat. But of those 185 wins, 27 of them were Q1 wins. The gap between the SEC and the next best power ranking conference, the Big Ten, is massive. And we're done with non-conference play for the SEC. So this is going to hold. When you look at the league and the net rankings, and I think you said the 63rd
in Ken
63rd,
Palm.
that's in Ken Palm. In the net, South Carolina is 85. LSU is 53, and those are the two lowest ranked teams. This is the net, the current net. Auburn is 1, Tennessee is 2, Florida is 4, Alabama's 10, Kentucky's 14, A&M is Mississippi State is 18, and A&M is 20. Right now, if today were Selection Sunday, which of course it's not, 12 teams from the SEC would probably make it just today. And by the time we get to the end of the season, we're talking, I think 10, maybe even 11 could still make it. 12's not out of the question. Just depends on how this whole thing shakes out. 10 years ago, 3 teams. In 2014, this is not ancient history, this is 2014, 3 teams from the SEC made the NCAA tournament. 10 years later, they are the premier conference in college basketball this season. I don't know if it's going to be this way forever, but it's certainly that way this year. And Auburn, we mentioned those 27 Q1 wins. Auburn's got 6 of them. That's why they're number 1 in the net right now, and they're 12-1 overall. So when you say, hey, it feels like a must-win, on the surface, in a vacuum, that sounds ridiculous in an 18-team conference schedule. But I'm not sure that if LSU has postseason aspirations, and certainly they do, McMahon, the team has gotten better, okay, from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. I've watched them. the year 2 team was better than year 1. And year 3, I think this team is better than last year's team, even without Jalen Reed. But I don't think their record's going to be better. It would be a real haul for LSU to get to the 9-9 that they were in the SEC a year ago, even with what I think is a better team.
That'd be amazing if they went 9-9. That'd be really impressive. Joe Lunardi right now has 12 SEC teams, and he's admitted that by the end of this, they probably won't get 12 teams.
They have to beat each other by definition.
To give you an idea, the first 4 out, 2 of those teams are SEC teams. Vanderbilt, Missouri, LSU's 2 first SEC opponents. So that's your opportunity. Those are 2 teams that are currently not in the bracket as of now. But SEC right now, you said it's maybe the best the SEC's ever been. It might be one of the best conferences ever in basketball. Right now, they have the highest combined RPI since the 97-98 season, at least when this was started to be tracked.
We did some of these historical comparisons, Jimmy and I, one day in December about the year the Big East put 3 teams in the Final Four, Georgetown, St. John's, and Villanova. The year Villanova won it in 1985. The ACC certainly, during the Ralph Sampson, Michael Jordan, Lynn Bias era had some great conferences, but just based on the numbers so far, the SEC's got an opportunity to be in that conversation at the end of the year. We'll take our final break here at Ruffino's. Come on out and see us for a lunch here on Highland Road, live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch with Otten Hanny from Rufino's on Highland Road on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
So week 18 in the NFL, few college bowl games left over. Big weekend in college basketball, but don't let it escape your attention, Max. This is a absolutely massive weekend for the New Orleans Pelicans. Back-to-back games with the Washington Wizards. Last place in the NBA is on the line. I've been to Tankathon so many times that it's now come up in my favorites, okay? So the worst 2 teams in the NBA will play tonight in New Orleans and on Sunday in Washington. And this is a real chance for the Pelicans to open up some breathing room in the race for last in the NBA and to make sure they've got if you're in the top 3, you've got the same odds for the number 1 pick. So it doesn't matter whether you finish last or second to last. But open up a cushion for when they come back and maybe start to win some of those meaningless games in March like they have done it sometimes in the past. So just a huge weekend for the Pels. I know you've been spotlighting this one.
A team that has lost 11 in a row is a 7-point favorite.
They have won 2 games since November the 1st. They're averaging a win a month, Max.
Yeah, Jimmy and I went
They play 16, 17 games a month.
One of those wins back November 15th, and they've won 1 game since then. It's incredible.
Did you keep the ticket stub? I guess they don't do ticket stubs anymore.
Unfortunately, I didn't. It's on my phone somewhere. I can screenshot it maybe.
Well, they're sending that to the Hall of Fame, right?
A 7-point favorite. Does anyone have to win this game? Are we sure someone has to win this game? Or is there a winner, really? There's a loser.
There are definitely no winners in this game tonight. Somebody will finish with more points than the other. One of these teams will finish with more points, but there are no winners here.
Yves Misty, the Western Conference rookie.
He's having a fantastic, way better than expected year. He's the one bright spot. All right, thanks to everybody for participating. Football Sunday will be from the Queen this Sunday at 10 a.m. Hope you join us for that. And on Monday, we're at Walk-Ons in Brewley. For Max and for Jordan back in the studio, I'm Charles Hanniger saying thank you and good afternoon. Have a great weekend, everybody, and stay tuned for Hunt Palmer on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.